I'm very happy to be here to moderate this event, which is Books and Documentaries Facts of Life. What is this about? In a time of deep fakes and conspiracies, books and documentaries have become reliable sources of facts and truths. And we have two very distinguished gentlemen to talk about these things. Over here, we have Horatio Howie Severino. He has been a journalist for nearly 40 years and has produced over 200 TV documentaries. He is in his, everything is being revealed here, Howie. He is in his 23rd TV documentaries for Eyewitness, which is one of the longest running television shows in the Philippines. He is also a pioneering podcast host for GMA Integrated News. From 2009 to 2014, he was the editor-in-chief of GMA News Online. His documentary on being an early COVID survivor, Ako si Patient 2828, won Best Documentary in the Philippines Gawad Tanglao Awards. In 2023, he was given the Balagtas Literary Award for his writings by the Union ng Mga Manunulat ng Pilipinas or UMPIL. This is Howie Severino over here. Okay. And to my right, this handsome guy here is Nick Deocampo. He is a filmmaker, film historian, and author. He recently retired as a film professor at the UP Film Institute in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He has served as a jury member in various international film festivals. Now, as a scholar, he has been a recipient of various academic grants and fellowships. Among his publications is Alternative Cinema, the Unchronicled History of Alternative Cinema in the Philippines. In 2023, he received the Premio Casa Asia, Spain's highest cultural award. He is also the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Film Development Council of the Philippines for his achievements in cinema. But enough about them. Let's hear from them. Okay. So we'll begin with Howie. All right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this honor. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not a book author like many people here. But I am a storyteller and a broadcast journalist, and TV documentary has been my main medium all these years and decades actually. So I'm going to try to distill that long career into about 10 minutes, and then air an 8-minute video that I edited for today that illustrates a kind of documentary making that I'm proposing for anyone with a smartphone.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So Camille, thank you. My first slide. So documentary is a lot of things. No, I mean it's not just a profession. It's not just a way of telling a story. But for me, it's a way of experiencing the world. No, because the root word of documentary is to document, and I think everyone is empowered to document, and it's so important to be documenting because we have a word in the Philippines that probably has a translation for in any language. It's called resibo. There's so much fake news, falsehood, disinformation going around that the more you document, the more you're gathering evidence about the truth. So that's so basic to what I do as a journalist and what I do as a documentary maker. Yeah, next please. So, as mentioned, I've been a journalist since the 80s, but I've been doing documentary for television since 1999. It was actually the analog days. So, some people are, I think, tempted to call me a dinosaur, but I'm not extinct, and I like to think I'm still in my prime because I'm using digital technologies to do my work today. But before the age of drones, this is how we used to shoot aerials. We used to hitch rides with military helicopters that could easily be shot down by insurgents on the ground. So I started in those days, but happily we don't have to do this anymore to shoot aerials.
But it's more exciting.
It's more exciting, but there are other ways to get excitement these days, Dean. Okay, next please. So I've been a journalist since 1988, the analog days. So this is a film camera that this is the days before mobile phones. And I used to cover the mountains, the Cordillera Mountains as a beat. So I used to have to walk all the way or take jeep or a lot of trips to go to Baguio just to file a story, even if I was somewhere like Kalinga or Ifugao. You know?
Wow.
So those were the days. Next, please. So I've been hosting a show, a documentary show called Eyewitness since 2002. It's the longest running public affairs show in the Philippines. And these are some of my colleagues. So I co-host it. And this has been my primary vehicle for journalism all these years. Next, please. So, like a lot of documentary makers and journalists, we cover wars and disasters. The latest armed conflict that I covered was Marawi siege. I went there 3 times. The start, in the middle, and then towards the end. No. So next, please. So, what I love about doing documentaries, because I started as a newspaper reporter, where I used to move around solo, and a lot of it was really lonely, solitary work. So when I moved to documentary and television, it became a team enterprise. And that's what I really love about. That's another reason why I love doing documentary and television is because it's a team enterprise. You always have somebody to talk to at the end of the day who understands what you just went through. So I always want to show the people I work with. No, so that's my cameraman on the left. That's one of my producers, and that's my director on the right, si Janus. And we're about to cover a conflict in Marawi, in Mindanao. Next, please. So this is my cameraman, Christian Carrion, and he is actually right in the middle of the street documenting or shooting a helicopter gunship as it was attacking an enemy position. Next, please. So supposedly this is at the end of the war, and then shortly after we got these soldiers patrolling, there was gunfire, and we had to evacuate from that area. Next, please. So that's kind of a typical scene in Marawi, in Mindanao, towards the end of the war. Much of the city looked like that. Quite familiar for those who have covered conflicts anywhere in the world. Next, please. Okay, now there are different kinds of wars and conflicts, and I also covered the what many call the drug war. I refuse to call it a drug war. Because when you call something a war, it implies that there are two sides of combatants. Okay. And from much of the evidence that we gathered, me and a lot of the journalists who covered the Duterte killings, most of the victims were actually unarmed and they were helpless. So it was really a one-sided. So it's actually closer to being a massacre than a war. But so I remind my colleagues that every time you call what's happening a drug war, you're actually buying into the official narrative of the administration. So I don't want to call it a drug war. A lot of my colleagues and even around, even overseas, it's often referred to as the drug war. But I'm trying to correct that. Next, please. Okay. Of course, the Duterte killings, if you cover the Duterte killings, you actually are documenting a lot of dead bodies. I'm not going to show you any dead bodies. I just want to show an image that actually, from my coverage of the Duterte killings, that became the most viral image. So there's no body here, but there was a woman who was sitting there moments before. I actually arrived with my colleagues even before the police. So we were there. We just saw on Twitter that there was another shooting on this street, and we happened to be nearby, so we were there. So there was a woman who was sitting in that chair, and she was basically bleeding to death. She was shot while having this meal, and she wasn't even able to finish the meal. When I posted this, there were just so many shares. So it just shows the power of an image, and sometimes you don't even anticipate the kind of power that a certain image will have. So that's really the power of television and broadcast.
Story already there.
Exactly. And you know what she was eating. You know that there's still watermelon that remains to be eaten. Yeah, so you don't really have to say much more. Yeah, next, please. And that's a close-up in case you want to see more detail. So, some people remark, there are so many comments about this photo, but one comment that kind of I remember now is that when someone's about to be executed, that this person's allowed to have a last meal that they can finish.
That's true.
Yeah. So this person was targeted for killing and was not even allowed to finish her last meal. Okay. Next, please. Okay, so I've covered a lot of, exposed a lot of wrongdoing, problems, etc. And sometimes journalists are critiqued for that. We're criticized for focusing on problems, on bad news, on negativity. So sometimes my team and I will pivot and do what we call solutions journalism. We'll tell the story of how ordinary people solve problems. And sometimes that's more useful. And this particular problem here is, the Philippines is composed of almost 7,000. What's the latest count on the islands?
High tide or low tide?
Yeah, like
600.
okay, more than 7,000 islands.
Yes, it's
Uh,
safer to say.
Yeah, and many of the children who live on like smaller islands cannot go to school because there are many islands that do not have schools, and they have to take their father's boats. Many of their parents are fisher folk, and when the waters are rough, small boats can't get to other islands, so that the kids can go to school. So the solution here of this community was they pooled their resources and they got a larger boat.
Like a school bus.
It is. It's like a school boat.
School boat.
It's a boat. So we think of in terms of school buses. These are familiar all over the world, but in a country of many islands, you need more than just land transportation. You need safe boat transportation, which we also lack. So this is how one community solved this problem of access to schools. They pooled their resources and bought a bigger boat, and then one of the mothers in the community accompanies the kids to go to school and back every day. And I want to show more images of this. Next, please. Okay, so that's what it also looks like. This is in Siargao. Siargao is actually a world-renowned surfing destination, but there's a lot more going on there aside from tourism. Next, please. So I want to show, a bit of the terrain here, the landscape. Next, please. So I no longer have to ride helicopters to get video like this. This is obviously a drone video. Next, please. All right. So at this point, I want to explain a certain kind of documentary making before I show my video. Because I've been working for the same show for almost 25 years. It's enabled me to return again and again to the same subject and watch the subject evolve. So this can be a community, this can be a place, because the land can evolve, so it becomes an environmental story. But it can also be about people and certain characters, right? Starting 18 years ago, I started documenting a group of blind children. And I've been going back to them to document their lives around every 4 or 5 years. And the last time was earlier this year. So I'm going to be showing you kind of a distillation of this 18-year documentation of a few of these kids. So I've been going back to document. Yes, over the course of 18 years. Yes. So I do this not just to show the changes in these children's lives, but their context. Because as they're changing, society is also changing. And I want to show, in the Philippines, there's been a severe lack of services for the disabled, the blind, the hearing impaired, etc. Right? And one reason, of course, for highlighting the lives of blind children and other disabled is to show what they need and show their situations, and maybe government and other power sectors in society will respond somehow, but also as a lesson to other families. But anyway, at this point, I want to ask our fabulous tech team there in the control to play. This is an 8-minute video, and I can discuss it after the video for about 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you.
Si Aliyah Maklit, ang kauna-unahang blind child na nakilala ko.
Kumusta? Aliyah, kumusta?
Mabuti. Maria Aliosa B. Maklit, Taport.
Wala masyadong ipinagkaiba si Aliyah sa mga batang kaedad niya.
Halika, gusto sabi ko tulungan kita.
Ay, supposed to help me though.
Sa mahigit 20 taon ko sa paggawa ng dokumentaryo, ang kwento ni Aliyah ang isa sa pinakamatagal kong nasubaybayan. Pagkatapos ng una naming tagpo noong 2007, binalikan ko siya noong taong 2011. 9 na taong gulang na siya at nasa grade 2.
Kumusta na?
Okay lang po.
Okay, oh.
Ang tagal kita hinintay.
Oo,
Matagal natin di nagkita eh.
Noong ka nakitang natupad sa wakas ang hiling ng kanyang namayapang ina na makapag-aral si Aliyah sa regular na paaralan. 4 na taon na naman ang dumaan. Muli kami nagkita ni Aliyah.
It's pay time. It's pay time.
Grade 6 na siya rito. Kaya makipagsabayan sa kanyang mga kaklase. Honor student pa rin.
Kilala namin si Aliyah. Aliyah, si Mr. Sajid Imaso.
Nakilala ni Aliyah ang tanyag na eskultor na si Sajid Imaw na may kapansanan din sa paningin at itinuturing ng legally blind. Nagkaroon si Aliyah ng bagong pananaw sa sining.
Sa gawang to nakikita ko kasi yung yung simplicity niya.
Noong 2014, naging bahagi rin siya ng dokumentaryo ko tungkol sa aking kaibigan at cameraman na si Egay Navarro na pumanaw na. Si Egay ang kasama kong masaksihan ang paglaki ni Aliyah.
Kuya Egay, marami po salamat sa maikling pagkakataon na nakilala ko po kayo. Huwag niyo po akong kalimutang ihay dyan kay Mama sa heaven.
Balik ka na.
Sa aming dokumentaryong Blind Child noong taong 2007, 7 taong gulang pa lang ang kambal.
Ay, paano tayo?
Mahiyain noon si Joshua at nagtago pa nang kami ay dumating.
O, sige, pag-aral tayo.
Pero si Jerome, bibo na noon pa man.
Alam mo na kung nasaan ka ngayon?
Dito sa Alabang.
Parehong hindi nakakakita ang kambal. Premature o kulang pa sa buwan nang sila'y ipanganak. Hindi pa buo noon ang kanilang retina na importanteng bahagi ng ating mata.
Anong pangalan mo?
Howie.
Mahiyain si Joshua pero si Jerome nagpresente pang magpa-interview. Pero siya raw ang magtatanong.
Anong trabaho mo?
Nagtatrabaho ko sa TV.
Sa team.
Oo, nag-i-interview ako ng mga iba't ibang tao.
Ever since birth nila, hindi ko pa alam sila na blind. Talagang sabi ko, kahit anong mangyari sa kanila, basta mabuhay lang sila. Kasi, as in, parang mamamatay na sila nung una nung naka-incubator. Nakita ko sila sa incubator.
Hi.
Jerome, this is Mr. Howie.
Hi. Howie, kumusta?
Taong 2011, muli kong binalikan ng kambal.
Hi, Jerome. Ang lalaki nyo na, mga binata na. I get it.
Ipinarana sa kanila ang iba't ibang posibilidad na maaaring maibigay sa isang bata. Mula noon, ininganyo na raw ni Mami Annette ang mga anak na subukan pa ang maraming bagay, lalo na ang sports.
Annette! Oh! Oh, hindi ka nagbago. Yeah, wow. Long time no see. Oh, ito yung mga nagbago. Hulaan ko. Jerome.
Yes po.
Joshua.
Opo.
Oh, wow.
Opo.
Wow. Galing, ang galing. Ang dami nyo ng tagumpay, ah. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Oo.
24 years old na ang dalawa ngayon. May kanya-kanyang hilig, pero kambal pa rin sila pagdating sa dedikasyon sa sports. Mga miyembro sila ng National Para-Athlete Triathlon Team. At silang dalawa lang ang blind triathletes sa bansa. Hindi lang tagumpay ang naghihintay sa finish line. May isang boses ng nakaraan ang nakaabad.
Hello. Surprise!
Ito na ang ikalimang dokumentaryo ko na kasama si Aliyah.
Ganun, opo.
Pedal na. Oh, okay.
Opo.
So, tsaka lang uupo.
Yes
Okay.
po.
Sa bilis ng takbo ng mundo ngayon, lalo na sa larangan namin sa pamamahayag, bihira ang naibigay sa aming pagkakataon. Labing-walong taon na namin silang sinusundan. Ipinakikita ang pagbabago hindi lang sa mga bata, kundi sa lipunan na nag-aaruga at nagkukulang pa rin sa mga katulad nila. Pati ako, makikita rin ang pagtanda. Noong una ko silang nakilala, inisip ko talaga kung anong magiging kapalaran nila. Hindi ko naman inaasahan na ilang beses ko silang mababalikan. Ngayon, may mga malinaw na aral. Kung anuman ang binigay na hamon sa iyo, maaring magtagumpay. Basta may nagmamahal na magulang. At may nagmamalasakit na tumulong. Lahat naman tayo may mapaghuhugutan ng lakas kung sisikapin. Ang hindi ko lang inaasahan noon, lalaki sila at pagdating ng araw, magbibigay din sila ng lakas sa akin. Sa dami ng sorpresa ng buhay, mukhang malayo pa ang finish line. Abangan ang susunod na kabanata.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was telling, when I first started doing documentary and journalism, I was often the youngest in the room. Now I'm almost always the oldest in the room. And I tell my colleagues, all of whom are younger than me, I say, these kids are much younger than me, but my colleagues are also much younger than me. So if we want to continue this project, I'm passing this responsibility to my colleagues because these guys probably have a long way to go, much much longer than someone like me. So maybe much longer than all of us. No, they're just in their early 20s. No. But anyway, I just want to wind down with this. I just want to share my first something about my first documentary project, which was actually my grandmother. So she was my first video. This was in the early 90s when I bought one of the first consumer model video cameras, and I wanted to test it out. I wanted to learn how to use the video camera, and the only person in my family who was patient enough to sit still and answer my questions was my grandmother, because she was the only one who was not working. And then I turned on my camera just to learn how to operate the new camera, and started asking her about her childhood, and I ran out of tape. She just kept talking and talking for hours. And not only did I learn how to operate a new camera, but I ended up with a family treasure. And I realized, I'm one of the oldest among my generation, among the cousins. When I showed it to my videos of my grandmother to my younger cousins who had never met her, I just saw how valuable documentation was. And that's when I really realized that doing documentary and doing documentation was worth a life's devotion. Right? So what I tell a lot of students when I face student audiences and audiences like this, because of the advent of new technologies, anybody can be a documentarist. And I mean, you don't feel pressured by what you see on television, etc. Even if you don't become a professional, I think everyone has the power now and the means to produce documentaries, at least about their immediate surroundings and family. Next slide, please. So not everyone will become a journalist, but anyone can be the family storyteller, archivist, and truth teller. Okay, next, please. So what I tell students is I'm giving you a mission. It's called Mission Legacy, and this is the assignment. Next, please. So interview an elder in your family and record the conversation and shoot B-roll. So those who are familiar with film studies or film knows B-roll, which is basically everyday life and context. So if you want to produce a story about that particular person, you've got video to insert. So it's not just talking heads. Next, please. So everyone can use technology to create family treasures, deepen relationships, and hone your craft. And say thanks for every interaction. Next, please. And thank you very much.
That's great, Howie. I hate you because. But now, okay, we'll get back to you, Nick. You're on.
Okay. Can we have the slide, please? I'm coming in both as a historian and as a documentary filmmaker. So I am, should I say, in a privileged position that to address the topic that we have of books and documentaries. Because with the publication of 3 of my books in German, French, and Spanish, the first Filipino film books to be published in foreign languages, I should have around 20 books by the end of this year, and some 58 short film documentaries. What I really would like to reflect on right now is really the historical context of our topic. That it is in moments of great social crisis that mainly books and documentaries really spike in terms of their production. And as a historian of almost 40 years, I have prepared 10 slides for us to revisit those moments of social crisis so that we will be able to see what in the past 100 years of history of cinema in the Philippines can we reflect upon. So mainly I'm reflecting on just 3 among many others on the Philippine, US, and German, because we're in Frankfurt. But believe me, it's not just because we're here in Germany that I'm reflecting on German connections, but rather there's something very tangible in terms of the relationship between Germany and the Philippines. It's a given, our relationship with Spain and America, but almost everybody knows that. But what I would like to propose right now is let us look at this relationships we have, not in a Hegelian dialectic, but I'm adding a new improvising on Hegel's dialectic, something more multilectical. We are dealing with other social forces. Can we go to the next slide? So I will provide you historical context. We keep talking about books, that resulted to a revolution, and the figure of Dr. Jose Rizal is very prominent. 100 years ago or more, the book was the medium upon which a revolution was articulated, and indeed it sparked that revolution. Germany had a role to play in that because, as we all know from Deocampo, who does some road talk and all that Rizal finished his Noli Me Tangere in nearby in Heidelberg, in a town nearby, and then almost like burnt his novel when he was in Berlin. And German figures appear in the narrative. There is his doctor friend, but also there is Blumentritt. So that was 100 years ago. 100 years after, or 90 years after, there was another revolution against a dictator. This time, it's not so much in the novel, but the way cinema figured, or motion pictures figured in the social process is very important. You've got Kidlat Tahimik and, should I say, myself, doing the documentation of the years leading to the revolution, and in itself, during the EDSA revolution, I was there to really take images and all that. But just to cut this short on the second image, is that mainly the connection with Germany, which I will establish later on. 90 years after, a lot of resonances, historical resonances, happen in this evolution of motion picture and books as time progressed. Second slide, please. All right, we go all the way back to the Americans. The social crisis was we were colonized by America. And America was the place where motion pictures was really born, in the laboratory of Thomas Alva Edison. And Thomas Alva Edison was the first producer, if you don't know this yet, produced the first newsreels about the colonization of the Philippines. I wish I can show you an example of that, Advance of Kansas Volunteers at Caloocan, the one with a flag there. So that is a very old film, 1899. And if you study the 45-minute film, the language of propaganda, colonial propaganda, is so articulate. I teach that in my history classes. Semiotically, the very images, the role of the American flag at the end of the film, central at the frame that you will see in 3 or 4 other films, is a pure language of propaganda. You know, the role of the center, politically, semiotically, in Western art. That's where you put God. That's where you put the king. You do not put the king and God on the side. It is really central. And you change the God and you change the hero or the king with the flag. You know what I'm trying to say. And not only that, many films were done. Imagine this is just around 3 years after cinema was invented. And the Philippines was among the first countries represented cinematically. We don't take pride in that, but somehow we look back and see that, oh my God, we were very much a part of the birth of cinema. And in that birth of cinema was colonization, was a form of war. Books were written, mind you, all right? Dean C. Worcester, the American imperialist that he was, wrote The Philippines Past and Present. And later on, it's still being talked about. Dr. Mark Rice from University of Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, revisits the films of Dean C. Worcester and discusses exactly what kind of colonialist, imperialist representations he made. But I did my reading of Dean C. Worcester even a decade before him in my book on the cinema, the history of cinema under the American colonial period. Can we go to the next slide? So as you can very well see, the production of films spiked. America made a lot of those films. I have, as a researcher, I have identified close to 100 newsreels in American libraries and film museums, showing exactly the colonial presence of America in the Philippines. We yet have to repatriate and bring back home some of those images, which is very sad for historians like myself, because how do we write the history of our country, much less history of cinema, if all those documents are out in those countries? I am just quite lucky that I go to film festivals because I screen my films, and I'm just too busy going to archives and libraries trying to extract as much information. And that's why I could write around 16 books plus the 4 books I'm publishing this year, so just around 20. Then we go to the Japanese occupation, another social crisis. 3 years of brutality under the Japanese regime. And production spiked once again, and these were propaganda. At the time of great military repression, films were made, but only by the Japanese. So, but no books were produced at all, except the book now that I have here, Eiga, which took me around 20 years of research in Tokyo and some other places to really talk about what exactly happened in those 3 years of military rule. So I have put a face to the propagandists. We keep talking about propagandists and propagandists, but who were they? I knew who they are. I have their dossier. It just so happened my Japanese boyfriend, I would ask him in the night that, before we go to sleep, please translate these passages for me. Otherwise, we don't sleep together. All right, it's a simple blackmail, but look, I have a 500-page book of the blow-by-blow account. What were those films? And I analyze, because I'm a film teacher as well, I semiotically analyze, what those films are all about. But I'm not contented only on writing about such an obscure topic. You don't read my books, and I know many students don't read my books. You can't escape me. I'm going to make you a documentary. So I make a documentary on every book that I make, whether it's American colonial, Spanish colonialism, Japanese colonialism, martial law. I have 58 volume series about the history of cinema. Next slide, please. All right, now we go to the German connection. This is, I hope nobody writes the book earlier than me, all right? Because I commit myself in coming to Frankfurt and having a talk with Kidlat Tahimik at the Deutsche Film Museum and all that. It just really gelled in my mind. There has to be a book on Philippine-German relations. Let us start with another crisis, the military dictatorship under Marcos. It took a German, not even a Filipino, not even me, who was already making films under the dictatorship, not even me was strong enough to do a documentary. The censorship was so strong and so frightening. But a German came. Please raise your hands, those who know Werner Schreuter. Please, come on. My, friends, German friends. Oh my God, has he been forgotten? All right, the diva. He was together with Werner Herzog and Fassbinder. That was his generation. All right, he made a film against the Marcos dictatorship. He was declared a persona non grata by the Marcos dictatorship because he was invited as a friend, but he made a documentary that worked against them. So anyway, their La Chaîne de Stern, The Laughing Star, was the documentary. When the Marcos regime fell, I think almost all German television played this film. Next slide, please. All right, more of the German relations. This is now my generation. The first film I made in 1983 was produced by a German journalist. All right, Hagbut Brockmann, living at 32 Neukantstrasse in Berlin. All right, so I made that film. And then the name I used in that film was Rosa ng Maynila, in honor of Rosa von Braunheim, the queer activist of the 70s, who I admired so much. She was the first speaker that was invited by the Goethe Institute to come to the Philippines and have a workshop. And at 17 years old, going up queer in a very Catholic country, you see this blonde German coming in and introduces his wife, who was a handsome guy. You just thought that the world turned upside down. What was this all about? All right, so anyway, there he is. And then I met Rosa von Braunheim again in 2015 at the Berlin Film Festival when I was in the jury for the Berlin Teddy Queer Teddy. It's the queer section. All right, and there he was coming in, and I hope to meet him when I do my film screening and queer poetry reading in Berlin after Frankfurt. But there were other films that were shown. Documentaries like Christian Weisserborn and Michael Wolfis came, and then I also made a film on women against the dictatorship at that time. So that was funded by the Germans as well. Next slide, please. And so I'm just trying to show you on the book side. That was the film side. So there is this book, Kino Cine, wherein all of those German professors who came to the Philippines, filmmakers like Harun Farocki, all right, Christoph Janetsko would come to the Philippines. So that is a compilation of all our reflections between the Philippine-German relations, as the title suggests. Then, of course, the EDSA Revolution, you've got a 3-volume EDSA, People's Power Revolution, EDSA 1, 2, 3, and all of those others, all right? I also have my book, which contains reflections on the revolution. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so, but the interesting thing is that the Philippine-German relations created a very special form of cinema. And this is the experimental cinema because of the influence of the Neue Deutsche Kino, the new German cinema. And what is it exactly that we found in that? As we were running away from Hollywood, why did we have to run after the shadow of the German? And we actively sought that because what we found in the Neue Deutsche Kino is the activism, is standing up to power, is destroying Hollywood hegemony, fighting against fascist filmic systems. It's not that we copied, perfectly copied the German. No, you will see the films. I wish I can show them, but we're running out of time. That, these are, we are the images, the iconography are those of the Marcoses and the poverty and all of that. The technique may have resonances of the German, but definitely one could really see it's Filipino struggling against that. Next slide, please. And so mainly we created a new set of poetics. I don't have all the time to lecture on that, and also the politics. Mainly it is in these three genres of experimental, documentary, and fiction. No mention of the commercial movie industry. Not at all, because they were so allergic to, these new ideas and all that. So anyway, that's all I can say up to this point. But especially the experimental cinema was the most radical, because we destroyed exactly what classical Hollywood cinema is all about. I teach that in my classes in UP, how to destroy exactly this universal film language of Hollywood, which is spoken by almost like every cinema in this world. All right. So the next slide. I'm finishing. That's the last slide I'm going to have. So it brings us now to the contemporary period, and all I'm saying here is here I am in Frankfurt with my first book on the first German translated book. I am planning also next year, hopefully, to create a tour of film and books festival, because I strongly feel that I've been part of this film festival phenomenon. I've been to Berlin, Nantes, and all of these places, red carpet upon red carpet, and you begin to realize the scholars are saying, until now we don't know what Philippine cinema is, and that bothers me a lot. What were all those expenses by the millions walking down the red carpet beautifully and all that, when we're not making a dent in terms of the accumulation of knowledge about us? So I am thinking of another route. So I am going into maybe 5 universities, and that will be the route I want to take next year. I will be in, I was just at the Goethe Universität. Oh my God, where Adorno and Habermas and, Kluge, were teaching, and, and my discussion was well received. I'm going to the Autonoma University. Anyway, this will be the tour that we will have, because now I would like to think that it's not just films that we need to be making, but rather books. So I have my French books in bilingual, in English and French, working on French postmodern theory. So this is mainly historiography. I'm talking about the history of 100 years of Philippine cinema. And as a matter of conclusion right now is that cinema, interestingly, were produced or spiked, increased at the time of social stress. Let us try to explain that, because the horrors of war, the brutality of colonization is what it is all about, and writing about them somehow clarifies those issues. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'd like to open the floor to a couple of questions. I'm seeing my time card already. So we do have time for some questions. Please. Yes.
Last year, when Italy was the Gastland, they talked about how the government was part of the selection team, and some authors were not invited. And I was just curious if you can talk about how this worked for your presence at the Buchmesse, whether there was any interference or controversy about who is part of the official team that is able to come and speak, and what you were speaking about.
Well, to be honest, I don't know if the government had anything to do with my selection here. I was just asked by one of the organizers who I suppose was familiar with my work. I think if the government had any choice, I probably would not be here, because a lot of my work has been critical, especially during the Duterte years, and even during the first Marcos presidency. So I like to think that the selection of most, of, if not all, of the delegates from the Philippines here was independently curated. But I'm not an insider to how this was organized. But based on the people I've been seeing, these are some of the most critical, independent-minded people in my country. And it's just an honor to be here with them and with these people here. I mean, Nick is a prime example of that. I mean, this guy's also one of the most independent-minded people in our universities, and Dean, of course, has his own reputation.
That's it.
Where can we see your films?
Oh, I'm inviting you to a screening at the Deutsche Film Museum, and that's going to be, is tomorrow Thursday?
Tomorrow is Thursday.
Tomorrow is Thursday at 8 o'clock. I hope to see you, and I'm going to launch my book. So, and please buy my book. Please read my book.
He's the best.
You know, it will be my 24th book. All right. So I'm very proud of it. My film screenings are there. The program opened a few days ago with Kidlat Tahimik, with our national artist. And there was a very good reception, very good discussion. We were talking about Cold War politics. We were talking about queer representation. And I expect some very interesting discussions. 8 o'clock, Deutsche Film Museum.
I love him. Okay. Really, the time is very short. Just one more question, if any. Yes. Okay, over here.
Well, thank you for your cool insights. I have a question. You insinuate to the role of your cinema. What exactly is the idiosyncrasy about Philippine cinema in the last? Well, you mentioned 100 years, but maybe take the more recent past. What is the role in a nutshell, please?
A role in doing what?
Well, if I understood your talk correctly, you're talking also about the role of Philippine cinema and its perspective, and if you could elaborate more on that role, on that focus, what is the role of Philippine cinema?
Okay, we cannot talk about Philippine cinema, at least starting in our generation, of a homogeneous, monolithic cinema. There's not one cinema. That has been my campaign since after I returned to the Philippines and studied the historiography in New York University, the plurality of what cinema is. It used to be that when we say Philippine cinema, it's said in a singular, and that is mainly the American-influenced, commercial, industrial, capitalist-based industry, which works on the principle of escapism. So in other words, let's watch a movie and relax. So it is using what is called the classical Hollywood cinema language. It is the language of narrative and continuity, and produces fiction. For 40 years now, since I studied in Paris documentary filmmaking, I did not study in Hollywood. So when I came back to the Philippines, it was such a coincidence that just a year after I arrived, you know, Ninoy's, Marcos's enemy, Ninoy Aquino, was shot. And 3 days after, there was a revolution. And I was there just ready. I was trained as a documentary filmmaker. This is not included and part of the movie industry. They don't make documentaries except now. But in the past, it's all, you know, there was a revolution that was happening. I remember this very well as a film historian. Filipino soft porn movies are being screened on the screen. So I said, what an irony this is. We're having a revolution and Filipino soft porn films are being shown in all those movie theaters. How insensitive was that? All right. And people were going, you know, as part of the festive revolution that was going on. They had tight feet. They went into the movie theater. But my point now, so what is the role? It's worth a book. And I think, sir, my books will be available. All right. Yeah, I'm a seller too. But anyway, I'll finish it by saying, we have a lot of time, 5 minutes. We can do a lot. Anyway, I'll close this by saying that our generation, since the 70s or 80s especially, was to react strongly to the official narrative cinema that was insensitive to the topic of this discussion, which is about the factual truths about life, because they gave us fiction. And so we are now talking about Philippine cinema in a kind of a plurality, that we are now making films that are working against that. And we who are in the academe are teaching that independent cinema, alternative cinema, experimental cinema. So we have fragmented, just like the 7,000 islands that we have. Now we've got a cinema that is growing in almost like every island in our country.
And on that note, I would like to thank both of you gentlemen for your time and marvelous insight. Please check out the books. And again, thank you so much. Goodbye.